Now, one of the things we like to do with ratios is to divide numbers in a given ratio. Another way of thinking about that is what would be a fair share. So I've got two different situations here, both involving ratios, where I need to divide a given quantity into that ratio. I'll show you what I mean by that. So in this first question, Alice and Bob have worked together selling lemonade, and they've done quite well. They've raised £180 of clear profit, which is great. But they didn't work for the same amount of time. Alice worked for a bit longer than Bob. Now we could say, well, there's two of them. They work together. They should get £90 each. That might be a fair way of doing it. However, I think most people would think, well, that doesn't seem fair. Alice has worked longer than Bob. Alice deserves a bigger share of the profits. So what we're going to do is split £180 in the ratio 5-4, where Alice is going to get 5 parts of the money and Bob is going to get 4 parts of the money. So we're dividing £180 in the ratio 5-4. What you have to do to begin with is you look at, well, what's the total number of parts that are involved? I say this carefully because all of the problems you do today, you will be considering the total number of parts involved in the question, every single question you do today. But next lesson, I'll show you that that's not always true, depending on the question. But I'll take you through those subtleties next time. For the moment, you're going to look at the totals. So the total number of parts involved here is 9. Alice gets 5 of the parts, Bob gets 4 of the parts, but there's 9 parts in total. And that makes sense. 9 hours of work happened split between them. So we would say that there are 9 parts that are represented here. And the £180 is 9 parts. I'm going to take it down to 1 part. Let's see how much 1 part is worth. And I do that simply by dividing by 9. So divide both sides by 9. I can actually do that in my head, but you are allowed a calculator for these. So £180 divided by 9 is £20. So 1 part is worth £20. Now the question was asking how much should Alice get? Alice gets 5 of the parts. So I need to go from 1 part up to 5 parts. So easy peasy, just multiply by 5, times this by 5, you get 100. So those steps were, I added those together to see the total number of parts involved in the question. That was 9. And I said the 9 parts is the £180 that they want to split up. I took it down to 1 part by dividing both sides by 9, and then took it back up to 5 parts. That's the share that Alice gets. By multiplying by 5. Notice how I didn't do any adding or subtracting. Okay, this question did not involve adding. Well, I suppose I added 5 to 4 at the beginning, but the total number of parts was 9. But when I was doing the maths down here, to switch between numbers of parts, I never did adding or subtracting. I only did multiplying and dividing. Okay, that's really, really important. For question number 2 then, we've got a situation where I want to make a brown coloured paint, and you do that by mixing together the primary colours. This particular brown is mainly yellow, 5 parts yellow, so it goes yellow, red, blue in that order, yellow, red, blue in that order. It's surprising, but it's got a tiny bit of blue in it, it's got quite a bit of red, and it's got loads of yellow in it. And I want to know, if I'm making a 5 litre tin of this brown paint, how much of that 5 litres is red primary paint. So I'm going to start by adding these together. If I do the yellow parts plus the red parts plus the blue parts, 5 plus 2 plus 1 is 8. So the paint is split into 8 parts. This 5 litres is 8 parts. 8 parts is the 5 litres of paint. And eventually I want that to say 2 parts for the red paint. I could take this down to 1 part first if I want to. I think what I'm actually going to do first is turn this into millilitres, because whatever I divide this by, if I divide it by 8 or if I divide it by 4 or 2, that's going to go decimal. So you don't have to, but I think I'm going to turn that into 5,000 millilitres. I think this question might be easier in millilitres. Okay, now I know that all 8 parts is 5,000. You could take this down to 1 part. In fact, let's do it. Let's take it down to 1 part first of all. 1 part is, we'll just divide that by 8. I'll do that on a calculator with you. All right, so 5,000 divided by 8 is 625. So I've got 625 millilitres is 1 part, but the red is 2 parts. Right, the red is 2 parts. So we'll go back up to 2 parts. So I'll times that by 2. That's my 625 multiplied by 2, and that's 1250 millilitres, or I could say 1.25 litres if you like. If you wanted to do it all in litres, that was fine. Now you might have noticed the steps I did there was I divided by 8 and then I multiplied by 2, but I could have actually gone from 8 parts to 2 parts in one jump. To get from 8 to 2, that's just dividing by 4. So if you notice the shortcut, you can do that as well. You could have just divided by 4. So what I actually did was I got from 8 parts to 1 part by dividing by 8, and then doubled that to get it to 2 parts. But you could have just divided both sides by 4. That would have worked as well. So there's 2 examples of dividing in a given ratio. You will need to do that in all of these problems as well. So you look for a total number of parts. In this first question, the total number of parts was 9, and those 9 parts were the 180 pounds. And you go from there, get 1 part, then get the number of parts that the question's referring to. Here it asks for Alice. She was 5 parts, so times by 5. Down here, I added these up, got 8 parts, and that was the 5 litres. So the total amount of paint was 5 litres, and the total number of parts was 8. So 8 parts is the 5 litres. I took it down to 1 part, and then it was asking about red, which was 2, so I went back up to 2. And it was all done by times and divide. Once I got down here and I had a number of parts equal an amount of paint, or when I had an amount of parts equals an amount of money, I didn't do any more adding or subtracting. That was entirely times and divide. You may use a calculator to help if you wish. Best of luck with these.